Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming the speakers for the next session. Mr. Sanjay Kapoor, Dr. Ruchir Agarwal, Mr. Lohit Bhatia, Mr. Rajiv Gandhi, Mr. Nirmal Singh, and Mr. Atul Kumar Tiwari.
I'll see it. More people will roll in. Okay, good evening, everyone. Let me start. It is my privilege to welcome you to this thought-provoking session on humanity without humans, how to thrive as populations shrink. As unconventional as this topic may seem, it touches one of the most profound transformations facing humanity in the 21st century, which is the reality of declining populations. And today we have a very distinguished panel to share their perspectives on this subject. And before I introduce them and invite them to share their views, I'd like to begin by setting the context for this discussion. For decades, global discussions have centered on the challenges posed by overpopulation. Yet today, many parts of the world are grappling with declining birth rates, aging populations, and prospect of population shrinkage. Countries like Japan, Italy, and South Korea are already experiencing this shift, and many others are projected to follow. Just to give you some data that I recently read or came across, in Japan there are 47 prefectures, and of the 47 today, and what they consider old is, or an aged population is 85. None of them have a majority of aged people. However, by 2030, 20 prefectures will have the aged population, and by 2030, 46 will. So we're really in a state where the number of old people is growing. The global birth rate, defined as the number of new births in a year per 1,000 people, is around 17 in 2024, down from 24 30 years ago and 31 50 years ago. So on the other hand, life expectancy has increased from 58 years in 1974 to over 70 today. The world as a whole has now more people over the age of 64 than children under 5 years of age. And this has happened for the first time in our history. The demographic transition raises a question as to how economies will adapt to shrinking workforces, rising dependency ratios, and increasing pressure on healthcare and the welfare systems. Economic growth, as we traditionally understand it, relies on a growing population to drive consumption and labor force participation. Population declines challenge this model, creating the need for alternative frameworks. Technology advancements offer an opportunity to do more with less. Robotics, AI can compensate for labor shortages while driving productivity. But then you need people to drive the evolution of technology and innovation itself. I'm going to ask them to show you a short video of robotics at its best. I was recently at the We Robot launch in California, and because I'm from the automotive industry, I must proudly showcase what the automotive industry has done. Can we show the video, please?
Here you go.
Thank you.
First, what's your name?
Samir.
All right, welcome. Nice to meet you.
Thank you.
That's one? Can you please tell me a joke? Alright, that's fine. Enjoy it.
So that's really what
show me the light.
we see in the future. So it is also important to note that demographic changes differ widely across countries. So immigration offers a pathway to mitigate population shrinkage while enriching societies with cultural diversity and global connections. However, immigration is a very controversial issue today. India, with its significant demographic advantage, is uniquely positioned to address the challenges of shrinking populations globally. Indian youth can drive innovation and technology for the world while also addressing labor shortages and productivity challenges in aging economies. With this context, I would like to invite our distinguished experts to share their views. I will begin with Dr. Ruchir Agarwal. He's a co-founder and president of Global Talent Fund and director of the Raj Center at Columbia University. He's also a research fellow at the Harvard Kennedy School and spent over a decade at the IMF addressing financial crisis and global economic challenges, and has been an advisor to the IMF, UNDP, WHO, and the G20. Richard, you want to come here?
Thanks. Good afternoon, everybody. I hope everyone's awake after lunch and are ready. Could we please have my slides up on the screen? And while they put this up, I have about 20 minutes before the other distinguished speakers follow. And what I'll be talking to you about once you start seeing the screen in a few minutes is the title of the session, which is Humanity Without Humans. Is there a chance that we get some slides on the screen? Yeah? Okay, while they pull that up, let me start by telling you a story. About 160,000 years ago, there was a woman who in the scientific literature, we call her the mitochondrial Eve. Have you ever heard of the mitochondrial Eve here? Yeah? So you have, right? So she is the mother of basically everyone who's living today. So all living beings today, all human beings can trace our lineage back to her. And so in many ways, the story of humans, I would say we could, if anywhere, we could start with her. And let me just see if there's somebody putting slides. They are, okay, yes. Just putting some pressure on them to get going. But the story of, I wanted to start by defining humans and humanity, and so I would say let's start our story with her. And then for this 160,000 years, the history of humans have been very closely tied with population growth. And population growth has gone hand in hand with economic growth, okay? Now, along the way, we've had three major human innovations, okay? And I call them the system of imagination. One is thoughts, is our ability to form ideas and combine them into one. So confederation of Indian industries, three different ideas put together, you get CII, so the formation of thoughts. And from there, we, about 70,000 years ago, came up with language, the ability to convey those thoughts to people around us, like I'm doing right now. You all can hear me. But then about 5,000 years ago, we invented writing, and that allowed us to communicate with people across time and space. So today, we can open the Upanishad and connect with somebody who lived over 2,000 years ago, which was not possible without the technology of writing. So in many ways, how I think about humanity, this is what I'm going to be talking about. We are in the from humans to humanity part. Sorry, let me just show you since I'm here. this is basically the map of how the mitochondrial Eve, who lived about 160,000 years ago, there's a black line. All the other siblings of hers basically died out, and everyone else today are basically descendants of this black line, okay? And so what I'm going to be talking to you about today is this reversal that we are facing, which is fewer people must drive greater output, okay? Now, as I was telling you, these three major human innovations, thought, language, and writing, and they collectively gave us what I call collective imagination. And this is my definition of humanity for the next remainder of my talk. And if you think about it this way, what these three things allowed us to do was accelerate economic growth along with population growth. And now the key question for us is, if population growth goes away, can humanity's collective imagination still advance and progress? So the way, one analogy that I want to share with you is, before the Olympic Games, there's the Olympic flame that is lit in Olympia, and this begins the torch relay. And so these runners then carry this torch all the way to the host city where the Olympics is being held, but only the flame changes hands, not the torch itself. So the way I think about it is, each individual humans, all of us, we are just the torches, and humanity is the flame that is passed all the way since mitochondrial Eve. And so the flame is our collective imagination, which we use thoughts, language, and writing to pass down. And the key question for us today for the panel is, will this flame burn brighter with fewer torches? Can we sustain growth and innovation as populations shrink? Okay? So I just want to use that to define things. And if you take my own, my maternal grandmama, my nani, she was one of 8 siblings. My mom was one of 7 siblings, and my generation, my sister, it's only my sister and me. And this story, I'm sure, is true for most of you. If you look at your grandparents, your nana, nani, or dada, dadi, and this is kind of what's happening. And the graph here just shows you the average number of family members, kin, a 65-year-old woman has in a given year, and India is the green line. And basically, the reality for us is family sizes are shrinking. Okay. Now, on the economics of population decline, the second topic. Today, this year is very interesting because 2024 is the year China's population is peaking. So every year from now on, China's population will shrink. 2 out of 3 people in the world today live in a country where the fertility rate is below replacement rate. That means, on average, women are having less than 2 or 2.1 children, such that there's not enough children in the next generation to replace this generation. So they're shrinking. And India, many people talk about India's demographic dividend, but I'm going to argue here is India is already very much facing this reality. So it's not just about the story of Japan. I'm going to talk to you about how this reality is coming to us much faster than we think. And India's fertility rate is today below replacement rate. So the next generation will be smaller than this generation, okay? And there are predictions and there's a black line, that by 2050, this could be as low as 1.2. So every woman, on average, will have 1.2 children. And that's a big, and this just shows you fertility rates by different groups, but I'm going to go. So what are the consequences? The declining fertility goes beyond demographics. It just reshapes economies. The lower birth rate leads to shrinking workplaces, slow GDP growth, and it creates irreversible pressures, okay? And one of them is through innovation that I'm going to show you in a second. But before I do that, just want to show you some basic fertility arithmetic, okay? So if you have a fertility rate of, say, 1.5 or 1.6, which is roughly what Maharashtra or West Bengal have, that would be corresponding to the yellow line here. In 2 generations, your population will halve. So if you have a cohort of 100, in 2 generations, that'll be 50. That's the reality we're talking about. And there are states in India that have already reached that level, okay? So it's not a very distant future. Now, one question, of course, is why are families shrinking? In a way, what evolutionary biologists think about this question, they say, there's a fish model on one side, which is you produce many offspring and you don't care for each of them and you hope that there's strength in numbers. And then the other extreme are the elephants, which is you produce very few, one calf every few years, and you take a lot of good care of them. And humans are just extreme elephants. We have fewer children and we just put a lot of energy and investment. In fact, humans are the only species that have adolescence, that we have this period where you have the capacity to reproduce, but you don't really fully grow, you don't reproduce. But one way to think about this question is just a higher cost of raising children. If in that reality of extreme elephants, the cost of raising each child goes up, you're going to get, at the same time, three things happening. First, parents will prioritize quality over quantity, and so you'll have more investment per child. The second is raising kids is more costly in time and money, so you're going to have smaller families. And the third is you just need more money to raise kids, so more women will choose to work than they would otherwise. And these are the three realities happening all around the world, including in India at the same time. Now, what are the implications for India? Just a moment, yeah. So first implication is, and this, when I plotted these numbers, I was a bit surprised myself. People, when they talk about India, they look at the black line, which is the population, and they say, look, in the baseline, India's population will peak by 2060, so we still have a long way to go. But if you look at what I have here is the red line, in India they consider the working age population to be 15 to 59, that's the red line. That is going to peak probably by early 2040s, so little over 15 years. So in 15 years or so, there's another way to look at the same chart, which is in change terms. Today, India adds about 10 million people every year to the workforce. 10 years ago, that was about 15 million. But in 15 years, it'll be zero and negative. So the workforce is going to start shrinking, and that's what the red line shows you here. And this is a big, I would say, it will have major implications for everything, including things like youth unemployment will no longer be as much of an issue that it is today. The second implication is we will have a two-speed, we already have a two-speed India, but this will become really big, deeper. And what I have for you here is on the map you can see is the fertility rates for the most recent year available across all states. And you can see Bihar, for example, is on average each woman is having 3 children. But you have states like Bengal, as I said earlier, where the number is 1.6, Sikkim is 1.1. And so what will happen is we will have very different population, there'll be massive shifts within the country in terms of economic power and in terms of population power. And a third one, which I also found quite surprising when I ran just the numbers, is if you look at GDP growth, now there's a big question happening. I'm a macroeconomist. I work a lot on macro growth issues in India. The big question is, why is there a slowdown in the economy? Already since 2000, about 1.5% of GDP growth, percentage point, has been reduced simply because of demographics, because of lower population growth and because of the shrinking working age population. By 2040, there will be 2 percentage points, and by 2050, 2.5. So when people are talking about can India grow at 7-8%, every year this will just get harder and harder. And this is a big impact. It has implications for FMCG companies, for example. It has implications for many different, for all the companies which my fellow panelists will talk about. It'll have implications for their net worth going forward as well. So, and then the fourth implication, if you look at, since I'm at industry conference, if you look at industry reports, they often focus on India's demographic dividend. But if you actually do these numbers for India's definition of dependency ratio, which is how many people are there who are not working compared to who's working in terms of working age population, we only 2 or 3 more years for the demographic dividend. After that, that dependency ratio is just going to rise. So I would say a strong statement would be demographic dividend is going to end, or is practically ending now. And so we need to change the narrative and stories that we carry about India here. Now, implications for the world, I want to just focus on 2. First is, I would say many of the problems we think are problems are already yesterday's problems. Climate change for one. This year may also be the year where we have peak in carbon emissions. It may be the worst year in terms of how much carbon emissions we've emitted ever. And it'll never be as bad as now. And so I think already youth unemployment or pandemic risks or affordable housing, a lot of these problems just become the opposite with population decline. And we've just not experienced it enough we live in a world where we think these are perennial problems. But demographic, I want to show you here, is an issue which just changes the signs of many of the problems. And the second one, and I think this is one of the biggest one, I would say, from an economic perspective, is slowdown in idea production. So here I have an example from Wikipedia. How many of you have used Hindi Wikipedia? Here. Okay, some of you here. At the end, we have about 600 million Hindi speakers in the world. And one way to see the impact of a smaller population is just to see the size of Hindi Wikipedia or the quality of Hindi Wikipedia compared to English Wikipedia. So imagine a world where there are half as many people as we have today. Many of the ideas that we have, bad and good, there'll be fewer of them. And that will have a big impact on pace of innovation and growth and not just in India, but the world. And then, in a way, I'm not going to go through the equation, but I just want to show you one point. The 3 forces that will create is, first, there'll be much more push towards automation, as the video showed earlier. Second, there's going to be much more focus on identifying existing talent and maximizing their potential. And third, there's going to be a lot more focus on increasing idea production using AI or generative AI. And here there'll be 2 competing views. Can AI really spread the scale? Is it just about taking existing ideas and repackaging it? Or is it about generating entirely new ideas? If it's B, then it's not so bad for the world. But if it's A, it may be quite problematic in terms of how much growth there will be in the future. Now, last section on policies. I would say I'm going to share 4 ideas, and I've tailored them a bit towards India. The first and the most important one, in my view, is identify and nurture invisible talent. And India has a huge pool of talent that is just not utilized today. And one way to see this, so I built this journey of 18-year-olds. So for the last 15 years, there have been about 25 million 18-year-olds every year in India. But if you just go through the journey, at the end, only about 2 million of them get STEM degrees, okay? And if you don't even utilize your existing talent well enough, you are basically, India's operating almost as a country. It's not as a 1.4 billion people, but like 400 million. So by just changing the utilization of the talent, of the gift we already have, we can drastically change the rate of innovation for India and the world. And another way to see this, so there's a paper I'm working on, which is called India's Missing Billion, where you can just look at 1% of surnames. They account for 60% of patents, roughly half of publications, and also many people who are actors or cricket players, or company directors. And so by just changing the access of the talent pipeline, we can completely change and this is a gift India can provide to the world, where the world's population is shrinking, not just India's population. Idea 2, very quickly, is on extending the productive life. The more politically sensitive way to say this is extend the retirement age. And as people are living longer, we need to have a serious and honest conversation, and I see many industry representatives here, as what is the right retirement age? And that itself allows same people to do more, and that will be quite important very soon, I would say. the third is, in many ways, one of the other problems I've done some work on is female labor force participation, and there's just not enough. So we have two opposing views. One is get more women to work, but at the same time, that leads to lower fertility. So there's a trade-off. So we can do a lot more. I've listed some things. I don't have time to go over them. Happy to discuss later. The policies does that. Those two things are not a trade-off. And the last thing on the policy side I just want to emphasize is, in many sense, a lot of the Indian economic policy is about providing support to the rural economy. Yeah? But that improves the quality of life in the rural areas, but also dissuades migration from rural to urban areas. So in the short run, it may be good, but the highest return for people is to move them to opportunities. And so similarly with fertility, we want to make sure you target the fertility in the places where the children will have the highest chance of becoming productive and contributing to the global knowledge frontier. And so those are the 4 ideas I wanted to share. And just to conclude, I just want to say that in a way, the idea, this is the last slide, I've shared with you is, how can we sustain progress with fewer people? Right? And humanity's progress has been fueled by our creativity, our knowledge, and how we've contributed to that collective imagination. That's what I've called humanity. And this, in many ways, will, going forward, depend on how we cope with population decline. In a way, that's an accelerant of humanity's flame that's losing, but can the others substitute that? And in many ways, the thing I want you to take away is India has a big role to play, not just for itself, but for others, by tapping its, or realizing the potential of its untapped talent. And here we have a chance to ensure that humanity's flame continues to burn brightly. So thank you for your attention, and thanks. Thanks for
Thank you, Richard. Can I now please invite Mr. Bhatia? Mr. Bhatia is the president of Workforce Management Quest Corp. He also serves on the executive board of the Indian Staffing Federation, a leading staffing industry federation in India, representing over 100 staffing companies. And Mr. Bhatia has over 25 years of experience across industries, such as textile, auto component, and services. Thank you.
Thank you. And good afternoon, everyone. This is a beautiful winter afternoon in Delhi. You often don't get such a nice bright sun out with AQI of only 100 odd when you are in Delhi winters. Thanks, Dr. Ruchir. I think the segue into what I want to present today is in very similar lines and similar tone to what Dr. Ruchir just presented. First and foremost, let me tell you, I'll draw a couple of parallels of the last 30-35 years and then build on what we're talking about here today. 1991 is when liberalization started. I'll take you back to 1991. Our population was about 870 million. Today we are close to about 1.4, 1.44 billion, whichever statistic you want to look at it. At that stage, India's GDP was only $321 billion. It's gone up 12 times. So while the population went up 600 million, the GDP has gone up 12 times. Mind you, the GDP has added exactly as much as it was in 2014 to the entire number in the last 10 years. The GDP was roughly about 1.8 trillion in 10 years ago, and today it's at about 3.8 trillion. So just keep that in mind. And with that, keep in mind what Ruchir said, about 15 million people were coming into the labor market every year. That's the 600 odd million which have come in the last 35 years. But something else happened. In this 35 years, predominantly the workforce in the IT, in the white collar jobs, in the postgraduate and above were the beneficiaries of liberalization and beneficiaries of all of this growth. Today we have an IT workforce market in India of about 6.7 million, whichever statistic you look at. The nearest one would be from NASSCOM. Indian Staffing Federation also came out with a report recently. They contribute about $450 billion. And they've gone up by 455 times from when liberalization started 35 odd years ago to today. And that's just a handful of 6.7 million people contributing about $450 billion. At the same time, manufacturing, which contains a huge amount of MSMEs, have gone up only 8.9 times. So 455 times in IT versus manufacturing, 8.9 times. Today, manufacturing workforce is give or take about 63 million, contributing close to an output which is commensurate, but now comes the important aspect. IT industry in 35 years has seen a CAGR of 21%. That's a compounded annual growth rate of 21%. Their output per person has grown by 14%. Manufacturing during this period has seen a CAGR growth of population of only 7% and an income earning population of only 2%. Why am I raising these points today? Because like Ruchir said, we may very soon be at the cusp of the point where the population starts to decline, which may not probably be visible for 20 more years. So don't worry, any child who's born today will come into the labor market after 18 or 20 years. My own company in 2014 had only 100,000 people working for us. That was the first 8 years, 100,000 people. Last 8 years of our company, we've gone from 100,000 to 600,000. So we are a direct beneficiary of the pool of the labor market. But if the same work in the 35 years was done for manufacturing, we would have seen a huge, stupendous amount of growth. What does that growth translate into economic well-being? If you were to add 100,000 rupees to each of the IT workers today, you add $7 billion of economy. But if you were to add 100 million manufacturing workers, which we actually lost in the last 35 years, the catch-up is happening only in the last 5 or 10 years, whichever way you look at it. That population at an income level of at least 300,000 every year would have added to the GDP a whopping figure of $361 billion. So why does India need an obsession on employment and on formalization? Is because at the end of the day, you can't have a roti kapda makan if you don't have a livelihood or if you don't have a job. So the basis of that is that. I'd add a couple of points, which is where we've seen our various ministries and the government focus in the last couple of years. The labor code, and a lot have been said about it. I just want to leave thoughts with you. I'm not going to dwell into them. The PLI scheme of the last couple of years, the ELI scheme, which is the employment-linked incentive scheme the government announced just in the last budget, 2 trillion Indian rupees to be spent for that. The apprenticeship program, the internship program, the ITI upgrade program, enhancing the female workforce participation rate in India, the formalization, that is the informal to the formal labor market gap, and above all, the GCCs. And why do I bring GCCs here? Is for the simple reason, ladies and gentlemen, there was something called a WTO for products, because the countries which need cheaper goods, quality goods, will open their markets for receiving products. They may not be as kind to receive people. They may not give you as many visas to send your people as much as we would want to send those people. So what we could do, or what we have done as India, is that we've opened our borders and our doors to something called GCCs, and now 1.7 million Indians work in almost 1900 GCCs. So that's what is the advantage. And last but not the least, while everything has been said about the Indian labor market and skilled workforce, and I'm sure we've got the Secretary of Skill, he will have the last word on this for sure. Everybody will tell you that a lot of Indians go overseas to work. There are about 13.5 million Indians who work as of now in different countries. The question is, can we make more of that, or do we need to open our borders more to the GCCs for future? I'll end with this and come back in the queue. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Can I now please invite Mr. Rajiv Gandhi? Mr. Rajiv Gandhi is a member of the Executive Board of Maruti Suzuki India and is the CEO of the International Automobile Center of Excellence. Sir?
Thank you, Sanjay. Well, I think all of us belong to India, most of us at least. I think being in India is very difficult to absorb this term called shrinking population. It took me some time too, because we live in a country where resources are constrained, we have huge unemployment, we have traffic jams on the road. But I think as a doctor also spoke some time back, it's a harsh reality today and something which is just round the corner for our country as well. So we have a collaboration with Japan. It's a joint venture with Japan, and we therefore know a lot of what is happening there. Japan has a very severe problem of declining population. I mean, last year alone, I think almost 500,000 population declined there. Why to talk about Japan? You all heard of China. For centuries, they have been the highest populated country for centuries. Last year, their population declined by 850,000. So I think the sooner we come to terms with this, the better it would be to prepare ourselves for the future. So I think, as was pointed out by Dr. Rucher, it's only by 2040, which is just round the corner, that the fertility rates would fall below the threshold level of 2.1 even in India. So I think that's something that we need to be worried about. So let's, I did some study as to what some of the countries facing huge declines are doing about it. So I think like Japan is giving huge subsidies for families to raise children, almost 1 million yen per child annually. France is a country which has got the best fertility rate in the whole of Europe at 1.7, but still below the threshold level. They have also come up with a lot of generous family benefit schemes. Sweden has extensive parental leave programs. So these countries which are already facing population decline, some of the measures that they have been taking. So I think we have to really look inside and see what we do about it. I think to summarize all this, I think we need to have policies in place to support the working population, especially women, by way of flexible working, remote working, so they're able to well manage and balance between the work and family needs. So what do we do about this declining population? I think one of the most untapped potential lies in is utilization of the female workforce in the industries. Just to give you an example, today, the female labor force participation in India is only 25%, as against the global average of 57%. Even 57% gives a huge potential for increasing the workforce. I think another good example of Japan, to counter the declining population, the former PM launched the movement called Womenomics in 2013 to encourage the female workforce. The women labor workforce participation in Japan increased from 55% in the 90s to almost 70% now. So there you can see the results. Sweden is another unique example which has a ratio of 80% of the women who are working and is attributed to very strong family-friendly policies. I think in India, I can only name one good example in this, which is the Ola Electric Future Factory, where the whole of the shop floor is managed by women, and women who are recruited from nearby villages, and they are trained to work in the shop floors. One of my ex-colleagues happens to be in Ola today, and we keep discussing on what they do about it. Maruti has made a small beginning. I would say still a long way to go, but we have recently hired women a few years back, and they are managing one full assembly line on their own. So this is something which is possible and can be done. People talk a lot about one of the countermeasures is increasing the retirement age. I think Japan has increased it to 70, but limited success so far. Germany has raised it to 67. A similar initiative taken by France was faced by widespread protests, because people say we are entitled to retire one day and enjoy life. Why keep working all the time? So you have to balance between the two. But I think even if we increase the retirement age, it's very important that these older generation people have to be reskilled to the modern technologies required in the industry today. Otherwise, they would not be relevant anymore. I think we talked about AI, automation, Industry 4.0, all these things are very direct, directly impact the number of workforce required for doing the same job. India is catching on this. A lot of robotics and AI and automation is happening in a very big way. Robots are now, as you saw in the video, in Japan, they have robots called robiers who help patients, old age patients. So, that's how they try to overcome these issues regarding the shrinking population. But again, I think all these technologies, I would just like to mention and end after this. We have this joint venture institute, Center for Excellence in Ahmedabad. Honorable Secretary, I had the pleasure of hosting him a few months back there, where it's a joint venture between Maruti Suzuki and the government of Gujarat, almost 100 crore investment we've made. So this basically started by skilling the young workforce into manufacturing processes, automotive technologies, make them job ready. But then over time we realized that some of these modern technologies like Industry 4.0, robotics, as well as the electric vehicle technologies. So we have added all these modules to make it relevant to the industry today. So I would request if anyone happen to be in Ahmedabad, you can have a look, because I think each one of these things require a lot of skilling to be done for the future. So with that, I'd like to end, and we'll take in the questions at the end. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Gandhi. Now let me invite Mr. Nirmal Singh, please. He's a co-founder and CEO of WeBox, an ETS company, and a leading online talent assessment platform for recruitment and hiring processes.
Good evening, everyone. So first of all, my co-panelists have almost covered the whole area, and I have to leave some space for the secretary because his words will be the words of wisdom. So I've got 3-4 minutes to speak. So let me address a couple of points based on a couple of reports that we do in India. First of all, let's differentiate between fertility and fertility rate. Fertility is going nowhere. It means till infinite we'll keep producing babies, and till infinite years it will be there. The fertility rate is declining, and the reason for fertility rate declining is largely one or two. One of them is in each country, if you looked at Japan and China and a couple of European countries, the demographic dividend they have captured, each country would undergo close to 40 years of demographic dividend. It means that there will be an acme. China acme was 2020. It means now the decline has started. If you recall, till 1980s, from 1980s, Japan had moved up. So till 40 years, they would have this acme, and then they will start declining. So first of all, India till 2050 will have an acme. So it means we will keep producing great amount of productivity, great amount of GDP. India is going nowhere. Second, what will happen if Japan productivity fertility rates go down? Nothing will happen. So what happens is every 100 years the same country would move up. So what will happen is a cycle. So if you look at every country's cycle, let's take two countries, Japan and China. You'll see by 2080 or 85, such countries, the fertility rate will keep on declining. And with each fertility rate declining, two things will happen. One, the productivity will grow, as Dr. Ruchir had shown one of the slides. Why does this happen? Because less people but the work productivity increases. So do not correlate between work productivity and declining population. Lot of us might think about that. The second thing is, what I'm more challenged about is not AI, or not technology. I'm more challenged about what happens when fertility rates are decreasing and AI is coupled with hardware. It means humanoids or robots will come in. So if you have only AI, so we spoke to almost 13 companies last year. We asked them, these are customer facing companies. We asked them, what does AI do to you in terms of manpower? So now this year they are hiring 13% less people in customer support. This year we asked hardware companies, how much robots are you going to use in your warehouses? One of the large multinational is an e-commerce company. Almost 14% workforce they have reduced in the warehouses. So it means that productivity will increase, but humans will not be employed for that productivity. So when you look at a macro figure, you will see that, oh, less number of people and almost similar or more productivity, this country looks great. But when you look at a per person productivity, you look very high. But when you look at a unit value of absolute value of the person remuneration coming to this place will be low. So that's the second challenge. The third one is what's in it for India. If you look at top 10 countries, out of where Indian skilled demand will be phenomenally high in next 10 years, and especially to 2030, there are 4 countries where fertility rate will go down and Indians will be looking at those jobs where skills are important. 6 are from Gulf countries and couple of Asian countries. Now what does that mean? It means if the fertility rates go down, technology will take on to that productivity and skilled humans will be required. For example, you must be hearing in all forums that Japan, they need healthcare workers. What does it mean? Who is a healthcare worker? Why can't a robot do the healthcare job? Because there are certain factions of Japan that what they need is something called a language and empathy. They're saying you should have language proficiency to talk to people in the healthcare industry and you should have empathy. Now these are the 2 things. Till 2040, the humanoids will not be able to compete with humans. Now, my last, but just I'm trying to wind it up, is first of all, do not get fearful of shrinking population globally because it's time for India. Next 15 years, India is going nowhere. India is going to capture the world in terms of skills economy. And believe in me, we would be the skill capital of the world. What does it mean? If you look at 4 of the major Gulf countries, majority of the today, Ministry of External Affairs, if you look at how many laborers, because there's something called ECR, immigration check required. So if you are an unskilled or a semi-skilled labor, you have to go for an ECR. 2023 data says that 400,000 ECRs have been logged. It means 400,000 people have gone from India to outside in the ECR category. And 640,000 people have gone for which are not under ECR. So my thinking and the data what it says is that India for next 15 years would produce a phenomenal amount of skilled labor. And when I say skilled labor doesn't mean only in the blue collar job, I'm talking about white and grey collar jobs. And we have to be only mindful that we have to produce people which are internationally acceptable, they are certified, and they are in the need, in the places where we are finding at least till 2080, the fertility rates are going down. So it's India's age, and let's bank on the country, let's ensure that we become the skill capital of the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Nirmal. Finally, it is my honor to invite Shri Atul Kumar Tiwari, the Honorable Secretary at Ministry of Skill Development and Entrepreneurship, Government of India. He is also the Chairman of the National Council for Vocational Education and Training, an IAS officer from 1990 Karnataka cadre. Mr. Tiwari has previously served with distinction in the Ministries of Urban Development, Overseas Indian Affairs, Rural Development, Textiles, Information and Broadcasting. Over to you, sir. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Sanjeev ji, for very briefly but pointedly you introduced the topic, and Professor Ruchir Agarwal, of course, he gave us a whole view right from 160,000 years back till the present. Aloyd Bhatia, of course, always ready with figures and bristling with ideas. And he left the salvo also at the end. We'll reply to that. And of course, Rajiv Gandhi ji, he went through all different ways that the Japan and China and demographic dividend or window which we have. And of course, Nirmal Singh ji, I mean, are you a professor, by the way? Okay. So Nirmal Singh ji also for giving a very fair idea of situating the topic very well. I don't know what to say because the discussion so far has been so widespread and in different sectors that as a serving civil servant from central government, I don't know what to touch and what not to touch. But I would like to answer as much as I can within my limitations, which is that the ministry which I had and where I have a role to play. The fact of the matter is that there are a lot of things which are there for all us to see and we are seeing every day. As Mr. Gandhi was saying that it appears counterintuitive at now to think that India's population is declining, but at the same time, Honorable Prime Minister in his different addresses to us has also asked us to do something about the aging population and how the population will decline, and already the Niti Aayog, Dr. Paul, there's a team working on having a strategy on how would we do about the aging population within our own country, for that example. Second thing is that, as has been rightly pointed out, if you see the incremental capital output ratio, and Professor Rangarajan of the economist par excellence, he has been writing and telling us that how we are not getting the adequate growth in the manufacturing sector. And while the productivity is increasing, we also find that the commensurate, the labor force is not increasing. So it also points to the fact that which was also evidenced, which Mr. Gandhi was saying, that in the warehouses, or Nirmalji said, in the warehousing in India also the more and more, the trend is towards getting more and more robotics and less reliance on the people. The GCC is also a factor to be considered, and since I am from Karnataka cadre, I was very happy when government of Karnataka announced a special policy for GCC in terms of giving them investment. And as Aloyd Bhatia ji was saying, it's a very, very good example of how using the technology we create the skilled workforce right here in India without bothering about the passports and the ECR and ECNR and the xenophobic interest that the outside world has at different times. So maybe there is some future at that side as well. Then we also find that we also need to increase the women participation, but at the same time, sooner or later we'll also worry that, like the other countries have done, that our children, all of us, at least in my peer group, we find that our children, even though they're getting late, they are not marrying. And that's a huge problem we are also facing, all of us must be facing, that well-educated, good earning, but not marrying, and the children will come much later. So we are also going through that phase of human society which has happened in Japan and China and elsewhere, where we'll find less and less reluctance to marry and have babies. And so if you're saying at the same time that, yes, we need to increase more women in workforce, at the same time you also want fertility rate to increase, so they appear rather contradictory, but at the same time we have to find some ways of doing this. Putting all this together, there's a different way that the government as a policy level would like to think. And it is here that what role the skill ministry would do, what the industry we expect them to do, and our industry partnership will require is where I would like to say a few words and then close my oration or whatever. The fact is that India is also India is also a country where you find people right from the pre-agricultural civilizational state to the modern stage also. So there is also the range is quite different. Southern India, the population is declining. Northern India, it is going, and that will create a different tensions. And the internal migration, nobody talks about the people from north, labor-producing states going to the labor-consuming states, and the inherent problems which are having. This is also something which is very evident, and very few of us even take notice. And then we have the gig economy and the platform economy, in which the people, more and more people are going for a very informal kind of workplaces. And the way the new age technology is developing, the workers and working place are also changing, which we have seen for the post-COVID. This is a very, very amazing and very dizzying variety of things are happening in our country, in our economy. And it's not always clear that which one to take first, because all of these are interrelated. But all of these things converge on one point. And that is what was mentioned by Nirmal Singh ji and other speakers, that we have a window during which our population is growing, and till the 2040 or 2050, there are different estimations. During this time, there will be a situation which comes once in a millennia, where India will have more young people than the old people. And this is where what we are doing. That is the point. All other things will keep on going. The technology will be changing, AI, robotics, climate change, Ukraine war, everything will keep on happening. At the same time, we have a huge cohort of the young people who need to be placed, who need to give employment, and we need to harness their energy and expertise and bring them to the economy so that the productivity increases. So what are the things which are happening? And that's what I'm saying, that how the skilling and the labor employment becomes so important at this point of our life. When more than the infrastructure, which we're talking about the physical infrastructure, roads, etc., we're also thinking about what we should do about the human infrastructure and what are the steps that the government has taken. I would say that in this regard, the Honorable Prime Minister has been very prescient, and when he has said 2-3 things which he had said. One was India to become the skill capital of the world, very prescient, as was told by Nirmal Singh ji. Second thing, we need to give our youth not only education, but skills. Not only skills, not only education, but both. And third point, which he says, the lifelong learning, in which there is to be skilling, reskilling, and upskilling. These are the 3 mantras which he has given to us and to all of us, and that is where all the things would converge. When we have a young cohort which is waiting to be there, then how do we make them employable, keeping the different trends and different levels of development in different parts of India? We have very high-tech industries also coming up, and very low-tech people are also coming up. So how do we manage all of them? It means that we have to go with all our guns blazing, you know. While we are doing for the AI and green energy and the green hydrogen and the new technology things, a lot of things are happening in the PLI, etc. At the same time, we also have to see how do we increase as simple as women participation rate in the rural economy, how do we increase the disposable income from the non-farm activities, and knowing that the manufacturing is going to be difficult, what policy changes which we bring about. And it is here that you will see that this year budget, a lot of emphasis is given on the skills and employment. And for the first time, we have something called the Employment-Linked Incentive Scheme, in which the government is coming forward and saying to the industries, please take manufacturing, please take women, please take new recruits, and this is a share that the government would like to bear. This is the first time that is an acknowledgement by the government that there is something in which the government and industry need to work together, and the industry also needs some incentive. Whether those incentives are enough, whether the industry will really come forward and do it, whether there are the economic conditions which create new industries to come up. There's a lot of imponderables on which one, like in government policies at a macro level, we have to give it a chance and shoot in the dark and see whether it will lead to some result or not. Similarly, we have something about the internship scheme. We have millions of the college graduates who are whiling away their time for want of opportunities or guidance or whatever. They come from a very, very indifferent kind of education system. What we're doing them, then you have the internship scheme is there. You have the, how do we create the labor force for the manufacturing industry? So you have the ITS system, which we are going to, which has been announced in the budget. We are working overnight how to bring the industry and state governments and central government in 3:2:1 ratio, so that we create the aspirational level of skilling centers, not the IT which we have thought of, but something much better and aspirational, which has not been tried so far. So that is our ambition, which we are trying to do it. We are also trying to give some loans for the skill loans, education loans, and all that. These are the policy things which are going to happen, and this is what internship scheme, of course, that is where the government is coming forward and saying that let them work in your company for 1 year, and let's see whether they can learn something and make them more useful for the economy. But whether all this thing will work. Behind all this, what is happening is also there's something which very few certainly very few in this room would have taken notice, although it has been said many times, which is about the national education policy. And the national education policy recognizes that the biggest problem with our young people is the kind of education which they get, and there is a need for that education to change for better. And that can change for better if it is done in a systematic manner, which is done in a manner where they also get the vocational education and the kind of stigma which is being attached to these skills and working with hands, colonial mindset which we all have, where the degrees are being given privileged over the working on the hands, etc., where the professor will always be considered higher than the plumber, as opposed to the OECD countries where the plumber gets more money than the professors and he's more busy. That kind of thing, that shift has to take place in our mindset. And that's why the Honorable Prime Minister has often been saying that we have to do something more relevant to the honor rather than the degree. And we realize, we are seeing, the way our education and skill has been brought, not from the labor, but it's become as a part of the education, school, and work continuum, that the skilling is there. And for that, whether it's a national credit framework, national curriculum framework, changing the way education is happening, the UGCs, they are sending guidelines, the AICTE changing their guidelines, apprenticeship-based degree programs, the school and colleges the colleges particularly being given 50% flexibility in having the skilled courses, etc. So we find more and more colleges and other such institutions, higher education institutions, are coming forward to integrate their normal education academia with the skill requirement of the workplace. And it's here that what you are not going to see now immediately, because there is something which are going to a fundamental change in our mindset. This is what is happening, will take a lot of work has happened in this regard. Maybe sometime we'll get another session we can explain to you that what all that has been done as making the APAR ID, that the technological background, credit framework, how these things are being added here and recognized there, and what kind of certification is there, and how the academia and industry participation should increase. And this is something which I am seeing. I have been in this ministry for almost 4 years, and this is what I am seeing now, that there is a general recognition that skilling and that part, the human resource and development is very, very important. It is not only related with education, it has to be relied, combined with the skilling part. It also has to combine with the proper assessment system. There has to be some OJT, there has to be some industry connect, there has to be more and more, whatever we are teaching or either in the skilling or education has to be in line with what the industry is doing. The skill ecosystem has developed quite a lot, which can be taken advantage of, and the industry, academia, and the government, they need to work together, whether it is the micro-credentialing we are talking about, whether the skilling and digital hub we are talking about, whether for small credit which we can talking about, whether it is a cluster-based skilling program we are talking about, whether we like to work with different ministries and industries, allowing them to come and work forward and skill their workforce, whether it is the employment-linked incentive scheme which the government is going, giving, or whether the ITIs which we are trying to change, or whether the skilling loans which we are trying to do, there is no thing which will left unturned so to see that the government allows these conditions to emerge right from the fundamental to this long range, medium range, short term, so that we are able to create and give opportunities to our existing workforce, which, as has been pointed out, 1.5 million every year need to be added to the workforce. The industry and economy also have their own problems. Not every industry can grow more and more people if they want to increase their productivity. So what is the gain we are trying to do it? How we are trying to see that there is also an emphasis on the reskilling and upskilling part, and how all of these things work together based on the fundamentals of the national education policy, the IT prowess which we are going to have, digital system which we are going to have, their recognition, their assessment, their acceptance, working with the industry and the academia together. That is where the real situation and challenge would lie. So my answer to the question today will be, humanity without humans, not possible. If there is no human, then what is the humanity, right? Second, even though there is a population are going to shrink, and there are a lot of things which we are trying to do with the sending our Indians abroad. And one of them is, as was mentioned by Nirmal Singh ji, etc., there is something called Migration and Mobility Partnership, which the India has signed for 6-7 countries. How we recognize, align our skilling standards with them, how do we assess them? That's a difficult task which is going to happen. And even for the areas such as the nursing or home care or healthcare thing also, especially we have seen in respect to Japan, language is a big issue and which we need to tackle as soon as possible. And there also the language also needs to be seen as a kind of a skilling requirement rather than something which is not recognized so far. That also we are trying to do it. The Skill India International Centers which have been announced, which we have opened already 6, and how we are working with Lohit Bhatia ji and their group together so that we see what kind of skilling requirement, mobilization support which is required by the industries and the companies to get the human resource forces, also the government can chip in. So in the end, I will say that this is a very challenging and epochal moment for India as a country. We have a demographic window, and all that which we've done for the help utilize this window, the onus doesn't lie only on the government. The onus lies together with the industry as well as the academia, and all of us working together, taking advantage of all the situations which are there, and all kinds of measures which are required, incentive-wise, pressure-wise, system-wise, compliance-wise. Everything needs to work together. So there's one single issue which is facing India, is how we allow our young cohort to be productive, useful to the economy, and that is where the challenge lies. And that is the solution of all that we are talking about, is that this is the time to act, and every day is very important for us. And this is where we would like to work together with the industry, captains here, and all the speakers. And thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for patiently listening to this drivel of mine. Thank you very much.
So thank you. I think we've run out of time, but I do have one question, and I'd love for all our panelists to throw a number at this. I recently read a paper, and this is really from a global perspective, that in 150 years we will be down to 2 billion in population. What is the ideal population of the world? We've talked about overpopulation, we've talked about decrease in population. Just a quick number in terms of what do you think is the ideal population? So I'll start with you. What do you think is the ideal population of the world?
Very difficult for me to answer. One hand, you're saying that we have so many people on the road, and then we find the people are not there in the factories. So what is the ideal? Lohit, aap bataiye.
Currently, the world has about 8 billion people. It'll probably top at 10 billion and then start to decline. That's what you're alluding to. But it all depends on which lens are you looking at. If you're looking from a Korean lens, it's already overpopulated. If you're looking from an Indian lens, I think we can have some more population. But I think the important fact is, and जो अतुल तिवारी जी के presentation में निकल के आया, let's use the window to become rich before we become old.
Interesting.
No, you should say staffing federation हिसाब से कितना होना चाहिए.
You have.
Yeah, the most important message for a growth perspective I had was more people means more ideas and more growth. So a big risk for the world is if we go to a world of 5 billion or 2 billion, we just will have fewer people to innovate, and that will have a huge impact on the rate we will grow. And so the last thing in my slides was that if one possibility to fight that is if we have generative AI, which substitutes scientists to create science. And we don't know if the future of AI will be simply reorganizing existing human ideas, which is very bad sign for that world, or if we have a world where actually we can create new ideas, which humans would have never come up with. And then we can live with much smaller population and still the humanity can continue with fewer humans. And that kind of is the main question in front of us, I would say.
Super. Thank you. Anyone else wants to take a dig? Or so can I open it up to questions? Anyone has any question? I think we'll take 2 or 3 questions. We're out of time, right? Vivek?
Just wanted to ask how brain drain can be controlled or it can be reduced still after working lot on skills and lot of growth.
I would say that the basic idea of brain drain is almost 30, 40 years old concept. Now the idea is of the circular migration. And the way the other countries are raising their immigration walls, etc., and the way the GCCs are growing in India, but still there will be need for the people to go there. So there are 2 countries. One is sending countries, one is receiving country. So it has been found that this kind of a movement of human beings, skilled if they are, is useful for both the sides. But it's more useful when those people return back. And that is the concept which should work. And it's very difficult to say that there is a brain drain or something like that. And if you see the phenomenon, what is happening within India. So I would say that we should try to create conditions that our people are going there, earn, learn, and get back to India.
Yeah, sir, the prime reasons for reduction or the decline in the population is said to be the rising costs, the costs in raising the children and also the work-life balance, all these things. So is it the human greed which is at the back of all this that has brought to this situation?
Look, humans are 99% the same as chimpanzees, as I said earlier this morning. And so we should be honest about who we are. So I would not say human greed or anything. Our goal is to take that 1% and make sure we can accentuate the good we can do with that. So if it took one person to create the mRNA vaccine, which everyone in the world benefited from, whether it's brain drain or not, it does not matter. And our goal should be to find those people among us who can contribute to the world knowledge and India's knowledge and make sure they have all the resources they need to advance the frontier and take advantage of what you call greed to make people do what's good for them, but also good for the world. So that's how I would characterize or respond to your question.
The lady on this stage.
Thank you. I'm Kanika. My question is to Mr. Atul Tiwari ji on the internship scheme that we are reading nowadays. So how do you plan to link this internship scheme back to the employment? So once the people are done with their internship, how does they enter into the labor market and the job things? And secondly, it's a more interrelated question is that, because you also look at the entrepreneurship side, and do you also think to connect these internship students to the startups who are looking for these kind of people to much more large extent than the existing companies? Is there any plan on that side?
Very difficult question, I must say. Thank you for asking difficult question. The point is that the internship scheme is designed so as to give an opportunity, a window to the young people of a certain defined age group. There's a lot of exclusion list also there. So they get an experience of working with the real work-life situation in different companies. And there has been a tremendous, there's a demand side and a supply side, and a lot of companies have given a good demand. And we have generally, where design it has been kept that it is not to give employment. It is to make them employable. That is what the education does. That is what the skilling does. And the companies themselves, they also see a value in that. And they also see as part of the CSR activity what they can do to make these young people get a work type experience. So that is limited objective which has been kept. Yes, at the end of the internship, which is being done by the Ministry of Corporate Affairs, they will also get some kind of certificate of participation and all that. But whether it will give them employment, whether it will lead to them some skill level, that as we go ahead, we'll be able to take a view. Now the pilot project has been announced, 1.25 lakh people. It is in the operation, so we'll come to those points sooner or later. Second point is entrepreneurship. Certainly there are different agencies of the government are working so that the avenues of internship are told to more and more people. So you find there are people from ITIs, polytechnics, high schools, graduates, everybody has applied for that. And whether they will come with startup or entrepreneurs, so that itself is a big debate, ma'am, because what do you mean by startup and what is the entrepreneurship? Although they appear in a same category, but they are different concepts altogether. So yes, some of them may like to go to the startup as well.
Thank you. So if there's no other questions, I'll wrap up the session. So, I want to thank each of my panelists. It's been very enriching for me personally to listen, to this topic, because for me, what's really top of mind always is longevity. And, I always talk about living till 100 years. I have 4 children, and so I've added my bit to the population. But I want to live till 100. So that's the other end of the spectrum where I'm, going to be an old person and need looking after. But I think it's interesting to, I don't have any more contribution, but I have things that we should think about. Is the cost of children too high? It's the right question. And very recently I read a dialogue with the most active user of X, who also happens to be the owner of X, talking about the fact that is the cost of children too high? The advent of robotics and AI, and this is something that we grapple with every single day in our own businesses, because AI does make our businesses more efficient. We're in manufacturing, and no matter how we look at it, we need to start reskilling people to do different jobs altogether, because AI is going to take away a lot of the jobs of people in robotics. That, the video I showed you, we're not far away from robots. I think the number says that by 2030, we'll have 1 billion humanoid robots, which means a lot of the jobs will get taken away by robots, and we're not ready for that from a population perspective at this point in time. However, it is going to happen, so it's a reality, and that's something we need to think about in terms of, I don't know if we go to universal basic income or whatever that may be, but what that may look like, but it is true. And then, addressing the aging population, a topic that's extremely important today. There's not enough being done about the aging population, or enough to address it. And then more women in the workplace, and flexibility of women to work in the workplace, including women working at night, women working in different jobs, etc. Again, a very important topic. And finally, employment is linked with consumption. And the more employment you have, the better the consumption cycle. And I think this is something that's so important. And when I look at this topic, and when I was asked to chair and moderate this topic, and I thought about this topic, and now I listen to the speakers, is coming something completely new to me. I'm from manufacturing. We don't really discuss this a lot. I almost feel like this is like the EV discussion we were having in our living rooms 5 years ago. This is going to become a topic that we're going to continuously discuss, because it is a problem as well as an opportunity. So thank you all, for your time and for your comments, and it's been really, I'm grateful for it. Thank you. Take a picture.
Thank you. May I request Mr. Sanjay Kapoor to present a token of appreciation to the speakers, please. And may I request Ms. Shoma Banerjee, Deputy Director General, to present the appreciation token to Mr. Kapoor. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. With this, we close this session.